Yeah, that's a more complicated one, but yeah. Good evening. Hope all of you are doing well. If you have yet to sign up for this Siyum on Thursday, the link to sign up is all-daf.org/Siyum. You can either sign up to attend in person at Mark's house, or you can sign up to get a streaming link to join at that time. The doors open at 8, program begins at 8:15, and we will take it from there. As you can see, the blot that are coming up are pretty significant. So today we're going to be learning Daf Pei Hey, and then Pei Vav on, what day is it today? Pei Vav on Tuesday. And Wednesday is Pei Zayin. Each of them are Gesund Dapim, with a gentle bracha that the last Amud in the Masechta is the entire Daf, which looks pretty pleasant. And then David Merzel will make the Siyum. So here we go. We are starting toward the bottom of Daf Pei Dalet Amud Beis, and we're going to be learning today in great part a discussion about Pikuach Nefashos, one that we started yesterday. Mechaben umafsikin lamali. We said we're about 15 lines or so from the bottom, 12 lines from the bottom, 4/5 of the way down. Mechaben umafsikin lamali. It should be pretty obvious. Says the Gemara, why am I allowed to put out this fire and stop it from traveling? Says the Gemara, even if the danger, the risk is not here in this field, but it's in another field, afal pikein, it's still allowed. Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Shmuel taught us the following halacha. 12 lines, from the bottom of the page, Pei Dalet Amud Beis. We're going to be spending a lot of time analyzing this halacha of Shmuel. Lo halchu bepikuach nefesh achar harov. We don't look at statistics when we are dealing with pikuach nefesh. When there is the risk of a person's life, numbers are irrelevant. Now, those numbers are irrelevant, 99 out of 100, 999 out of 1,000. Is there a breaking point? Let's see a little bit of the Gemara. We're not going to get that nuance. So says the Gemara, hang on one second. Hey, Chidami, what is the din that Shmuel is saying? When Shmuel says that we're not interested in statistics when it comes to Pikuach Nefesh, what is the scope of his comment? Let's say that you have 9 Jews and 1 non-Jew. In this case, a kusi is a reference to a non-Jew. That's Ruba Yisrael Ninhu. Everyone would agree in that case that that's for sure. That's not what Shmuel's talking about, because that case is obvious. Inami, palga upalga. Let's say it's 5 and 5, 5 Jews and 5 non-Jews. That's safek nefashas lahakil. In a case like that, of course, it's half and half. At the very least, we'd say it's a safek of who might be in the pikuach nefesh scenario. That also can't be what Shmuel's talking about. Elodika tisha kusim. There's 9 non-Jews, Yisrael echad, and there's 1 Jew. Hanami pshita. That's also obvious. Tahavale kavua. V'chol kavua kemechtzal mechtzadami. What is kavua? Kavua is a halacha that when people live in a particular place or when stores are in a particular place, we don't follow regular rules of, a 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10, 4th, and we don't do that. We follow the rule, what's called kavua. Kavua means that if all 10 of the apartments in a particular building belong to 9 goyim and 1 Jew, we view each one of those as kavua, as fixed locations, and therefore the following rule applies. The whole kavua, every case of kavua, when the factors that play into the statistics are fixed, then kemechza al mechza, that's like a case of 50-50. So that also can't be where Shmuel was talking about, because all of these cases, even with statistics, are going to be lakula, that we're going to violate halacha for the sake of pikuach nefashos. So says the Gemara, 8 lines from the bottom of Pei Dalet Amud Beis, to answer up Shmuel. How is it that Shmuel holds of this halacha? What's the case? Lo tzricha de parush v'chatzer acheres. Let's say that the 10 people do live in this particular building, and there's pikuach nefesh, and we don't know who the risk is going to fall upon. So we'd say kavu is kemechza al mechza. But what if they leave this apartment complex and go to another place? So then the rules of kavua fall apart. Then do we rely on the regular rules of rov? Because once kavua falls away, once the fixed location of where people live is no longer applicable because they left their apartment complex, so then the rule is that normally when kavua falls away, we follow the rule of kol de parish meruba parish. Then we just look at the rov. So says the Gemara, kamash malan de lo halchu. Mahu detema. You might have said, it's 6 lines from the bottom. You might have said, now that there's no more kavua because they went to another field, Mahu detema, that we would now follow the next level of rules, no more kavua, then we would follow the halachos of kol de parish meruba parish. Then any that separates from the pack is going to be like the rov of the pack. And the case was 9 non-Jews and 1 Jew. We should therefore assume that there's only the risk of 1 Jew, 1 in 10% risk. Says the Gemara, kamash malan de lo halchu bepikuach nefesh achar haruv. So that's the case where Shmuel is able to verify his shita. Shmuel is of the opinion we don't look at statistics when it comes to pikuach nefesh. At this point, from the Gemara, we're not going to see more detail than this, but if the risk is 10% or greater, and there's nothing to discuss, less than that, the Gemara doesn't discuss, but it's a good shayla to look into the Rishonim. 5 lines from the bottom, the Gemara says, Eini, is that really true that we don't look at statistics when we talk about pikuach nefesh? We just ignore them blindly, and even if there's a minute risk, we're going to violate halacha. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rav Yochanan. Rav Yochanan said, Tisha kusim v'Yisrael echad ba'oso chatzer. If you have 9 non-Jews, and you have 1 Jew living in a particular courtyard, and the building falls, mefakhin, we do move around all of the bricks and all the rubble to find people, whatever is necessary to be done. However, if everybody moves b'chatzer acheres, let's say that all of the 10 people, 9 non-Jews and 1 Jew live in apartment 1, live in building 1, and they move, they go across to building 2, and building 2 falls down on the 10 of them. So then in those cases, what should we expect? We should have expected the chiddush that Shmuel taught us, that statistics don't matter. Yet what do we see here? Says the Gemara, b'chatzer acheres, 4 lines from the bottom, ein mefakhin, you're not allowed to move the rubble. So we see from here, from Rav Yochanan, that we do care about statistics. So says the Gemara, that's a contradiction in terms. You can't, well, it could be a machlokes Shmuel and Rav Yochanan, but it can't be that they don't argue. There's got to be something. Says the Gemara, they don't argue. And here's the difference. Lo kasha. Ha de parish kulhu, ha de parish miksasayu. It depends how many of the 10 people left apartment complex 1 and went to apartment complex 2. Take a look at Rashi, the first of the very long lines of Rashi, all the way at the bottom of the page. Dibur hamaschil, ha de parish kulhu. If all of the people leave, so all 10 of the people from apartment complex 1, 9 non-Jews and 1 Jew, they leave and they go to apartment complex 2. Says Rashi, hol v'ischazik Yisrael b'hai chatzer shenaflo b'mapolos mefakchen. Since all 10 people left, we're therefore concerned that one of them is a Jew. So in apartment complex 2, so then, yeah, we're going to be concerned. And going back into the Gemara, we can finish the rest on our own. But if, says the Gemara, had the parish miksasai, if only some of the people left from apartment complex 1 and went to apartment complex 2, there, the risk of it being the Jew is even less. Yes, we know that 1 in 10 of those Jews was in the initial group, but when they moved to the other courtyard, only some of the people transferred. So you have to do the math. We can't really do the math without the numbers, but the statistics are less now than 10%. And there, Rav Yochanan, so it's not a machlokes, it's just different cases. And Rav Yochanan would say in such a case, ein mefakhin, that you're not allowed to move any rubble. So the Gemara then says, hold on 1 second. Shmuel himself doesn't agree with this halacha. Shmuel himself doesn't agree that we don't look at statistics. Why not? Says the Gemara, 3 lines from the bottom, Shmuel hachi. Is this such a possibility that we say statistics don't matter? But not. The Mishnah writes, Matzah batinok mushlach. We see a child who's been left at the side. We have these like safe haven rules in a number of hospitals, drop off for the God forbid scenarios where people are not able to take care of their children. So this, you find a baby in a car seat in the middle of nowhere. Says the Gemara, Imrov kusim kusi. If the place where he's found is a place of mostly non-Jews, then we treat him like a kusi, right? We treat him to be like a non-Jew. V'imrov Yisrael. And if this is classic rules of kol de parish meruba parish, that wherever the child came from, he likely came from within reason, the local locale that's near him, and he's likely one of whatever the rov is. So v'imrov Yisrael. Mechza al mechza, if the town is 50-50, also Yisrael. Okay. Then says the Gemara, Machlokas Amoraim. On this Mishnah, we have a Machlokas Rav and Shmuel. V'amar Rav, Lo shanu elo lahachayoso. Our only obligation, as it relates to the status of this child, is that we have to keep him alive. Aval yachaso lo. So we treat him like a Jew in that we have a burden to make sure he doesn't die. Aval yachaso. But for halachic status of is this person a Jew? Can she marry a Kohen if this is a girl, a baby girl when she grows up? Is she a Jew mamish through and through? So there, Rav says aval yachaso lo. No, we're not really sure about the status of the child, so we bifurcate and we say, as it relates to the severity of life and death, we're obligated to sustain this child. As it relates to halachic status, can she marry a Kohen? Is she mamish a Yid? Not so pasha, we don't know. Shmuel, turning to the top of Pehei Amud Aleph, Shmuel Amar, no, we're talking about lefakeach alav esagal. We're talking about whether or not we're obligated to tend to this child in a case where, God forbid, there's a need to dig him out from somewhere. So do we say he's like a Jew, yes or no? So it seems to be that if he's a Jew, yes, and if he's a non-Jew, no. But that's very strange because we should not be looking at that. We're not sure what the child is. There should be an element of risk that he might be a Jew and might not be a Jew. So, but the implication is that it's only if he's a Jew that we would save him, but if he wasn't a Jew, we wouldn't save him. So that should be a kasha on Shmuel, because all of this is said in the name of Shmuel. So it says the Gemara, Ki itmar de Shmuel, the line at the very top of this page of Shmuel that says L'fakech alav hagal, that was talking about Aresha itmar. He was talking about the first line of the Mishnah. What was the first line of the Mishnah? Says the Gemara, line 2, Imrov kusim kusi, that if most of the people who live in the neighborhood where the baby was found, so then we treat the child as if he's a kusi. On that, Shmuel said, Omar Shmuel, Ule'inyan pikuach nefesh eino kain. But when it comes to pikuach nefesh, we do not treat that child to be like a goy, and we are obligated on Shabbos to move rubble, to dig, to do whatever we need to do to save this child's life. So this is Shmuel l'shitaso. Now the Gemara is going to go back and analyze the 3 lines of this Mishnah, the 3 lines of analysis, I should say the permutations of what this child could be. So here's what the Gemara says. Imrov kusi kusi, when the Gemara says that if the majority of the community are non-Jews and the child is treated like a kusi, lamai hilchasa, how does that play out halachically? What does that mean? Amara papa laha'achilo nevelos. You're allowed to give this child nevela. You don't have to spend more money on the kosher meat. Got shchita, malicha, shochet, much more expensive. We all know that. We drive by these signs all the time. 2 sandwiches for $4. That's like the lettuce on the bread. That's nothing. It doesn't compare at all to our food. And then you go to any restaurant you want. We're not picking on any of them. No sandwich is under $10. I don't think there is such a thing. Whatever. 2 for $15 is already a deal. So here, it's much cheaper to give the kid a nevela, and here, rov kusi and kusi. So legabe nevela, we treat the child like a kusi. Then the Gemara says, what was the next statement of our Mishnah? The next permutation was imrov Yisrael, Yisrael. That if the majority of the community where the baby was found was Jewish, we treat the child like a Jew. L'may hilchasa, in what way? La'achzer lo avedasa, that we have the din of hashalas aveda that applies to this child. When he gets older, if he loses something, we're obligated. We have a mitzvah to do hashalas aveda. What about mechza al mechza Yisrael? What does it mean that if the community is 50-50, half Jewish, half not Jewish, that we treat him like a Yisrael l'may hilchasa? So Amar Reish Lakish le-nizakin. We treat him like a Jew in regards to nizikin. So this is a very interesting halacha. That let's say that a person has a shiur, they have an ox, and the ox is a short tom. We're going to learn about this more in other Maseches, but it's considered to be a non-violent animal. It has up to 2 violent deaths. It's not considered a shiur mu'at, a dangerous animal. So the halacha is that if a Jew's animal kills another Jew's animal, then he's obligated to pay chatzi nezek. If a non-Jew kills a Jew's animal, then the non-Jew is obligated to pay nezek shalim. So it's twice as much, full cost versus half cost. So now let's see how this plays out. Hey chidami, what's the case? Says the Gemara 9 lines down or so on Pehei Amud Aleph. Inema de nagche Torah didan l'Torah didei. If the non-Jewish, if the Jewish owner's animal gored the non-Jewish owner's animal, so Nasi Raya V'Nishkal, we'll have to look at the halachic status. We see, you're mechza al mechza, we treat you like Israel, so we have to pay you whatever you deserve as a Jew. You have to pay whatever you deserve. So chatzi nezek. Lo tzricha, says the Gemara, the case we must be dealing with over here is the nagche Torah didei l'Torah didan. The case is where the non-Jew's animal gored the Jewish animal. Now, if he's a Yisrael, then he only has to pay half. So therefore, palga yahivle, immediately he pays the chatzi nezek, because the Mishnah said in this case, this child was a mechza al mechza, a Jew, and he's like Yisrael, and a Jew only has to pay chatzi nezek. And then says the Gemara, idach palga, the other half, that maybe that this guy, this baby who was a half and half, right? We don't know exactly what he was. Idach palga, the other half, neimale, he's going to say, I see raya de lav Yisrael ana ushkol. Once you can prove halachically that I'm a goy, you can have your nezek shalim. But until that time, hamotzi mechavero alav haraya, you can't take money out of my hand. All we know right now is I'm that baby from the car seat from 25 years ago, and the halacha is that I'm a mechza al mechza Jew. I'm treated like Yisrael, so therefore I only owe you chatzi nezek. Had I been a goy doraisa mamish through and through, I would owe you nezek shalim. So if you can prove that I'm a goy doraisa, I'm going to give you more. So that's what the Gemara says here in analyzing the Mishnah about the baby, which was called the tinok mushlach, the baby who was left out to fend for himself. We treat him like Yisrael in regards to chatzi nezek, and he is not considered a goy doraisa yet, not without a raya. Says the Gemara in eerie form, Mishanafal alav mapola, says our Mishnah already hinted to. Here are some of the details. My ka'amar should be obvious. So it says the Gemara, lo mi boya ka'amar. Why is our Mishnah even talking about this? Of course, if a building falls, you do anything you can to save a life on Shabbos, not on Shabbos. Doesn't make a difference. So it says the Gemara, lo mi boya ka'amar. No, I'm teaching you a chiddush. Lo mi boya. I don't need you to tell me safek hu sham, safek eno sham, di isechai hu demafakhin, that I'm not sure if he's there or if he isn't there, but I know that he's alive. That case is pashut, obviously. Even if I'm not even sure if he's alive, obviously the halacha should be dig away, do anything you can. That's one thing that was learned. And the third of the way down, and I don't even, that case is obvious. Maybe he's alive, maybe he's not alive, and he's a yid. So you have a double suffix. Normally, a double suffix is a sveka, suffix that he's even there. And even if he's there, maybe he's a goy. It says the Gemara, yeah, you're Machal Shabbos. We don't even talk about that. That's the ABCs. If there's a building and there's a possibility that there's a Jew in the building and the building fell, dig and dig and dig without stopping until everyone is uncovered. And the chiddush is that you shouldn't make the error in assuming that the person had to be alive for you to search. He might even be dead. We don't know. And then the second layer is that even if he is a suffix chai, suffix mace, and even if it's a suffix kusi, suffix Yehudi, you don't stop looking. But let's say the practicality would be, and this is not very PC, but the practicality would be is that if you knew for sure that every last person in the building was a kusi, then the halacha is it's ein mefakchen asagal. Then you're not allowed to clear the rubble. Now, there might be heter mishum eva, there are like maybe secondary reasons. That's why Hatzalah, when I worked on Hatzalah, we took calls on Shabbos all the time. And sometimes a guy would call. And the halacha is mishum eva, you're supposed to take the call, 100%. And if the call came in that way, Hatzalah would take the call and they would be machal Shabbos b'far hesia, lifnei am va'eda, and that would be appropriate. But if you knew b'veirur that every last person in the building was a kusi, so then you could not be mefakech hasagal. So the chiddush here is that when there's a suffix Yehudi and suffix kusi, you're still supposed to do, obviously. It should be obvious. Okay, so that brings us to the two dots here. Says the Gemara, mitzauhu chai mefakhin. If we find the person is still alive, of course we dig to unbury the person. Mitzauhu chai pshita. What kind of question is that? He's trapped under cement. You know what? Let's wait till after Shabbos. It's ridiculous. What does the Gemara even mean? Says the Gemara, a beautiful, beautiful idea. Lo tzricha de'afilu l'chayesha. Even if his injuries are terminal, there's no way he's going to live. But you can keep him alive just for a few more minutes. You're Machal Shabbos for that. Doesn't make a difference. A few more moments. As long as the neshama can stay in the body, suffix, even out the suffix of, we would still be Machal Shabbos because Da'afilu l'chayisha, every moment is worth living in that capacity, and one can be Machal Shabbos under those circumstances. If a person is definitely dead, and let's say it's the only person in the building, no need to dig anymore. Hanami pshita. Why would we move the mace? There's nothing to do. We know that he has unfortunately passed away. Lo tzricha, says the Gemara. It must be that we're speaking about the following shita of Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish. What does Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish say? If Rahmana Litzlan, there's a mace in a building, we do not remove the mace from the building if the building catches on fire. Amar Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish, I'm not sure that's true. Shamati, he says, I heard Shamatzilin asames mibnei adleika. So maybe the reason why we have in our case over here, the reason why our Gemara has to make mention of it is because you might have been tempted to remove the body one way or the other. So we had to be clear that if it's mace, yanichu, you have to leave the body just like we would mipnei hadleika. And then says the Gemara, be'afilu Reb Shimon ben Lakish, lo ka'amar ela mitoch she'adam bahul al meso. The only reason why we needed to say anything is because Adam is bahul al mesa. You can't reason with someone under those circumstances. If a person wants to take their mace it's very hard to reason with someone under those circumstances, but it's not a halachic consideration per se. The body is muksa, and says the Gemara in regards to the fire, ilo sharisle asi lechabuye, that if we don't allow him to pull the body of the mace out of the building that's on fire, there we're concerned of sharis ilo sharisle, then asi lechabuye, put out the fire. Aval hacha, in our case, ilo sharisle, mayasile lemevad. If you don't let him, there's no isur d'oraisa he could violate. That we know where the mace is. He's unfortunately passed away. If he moves the body, it's an isur d'rabanan of tiltul. It's an isur d'rabanan of muktzah. Fine, but it's not an isur d'oraisa. Nevertheless, all of this concern is because of an adam is bahul al mesa, which is of course emotionally completely reasonable. What is one's burden of obligation to check if a person is alive or dead? What are the thresholds? How do we determine mace and not mace? So says the Gemara as follows, a little bit more than halfway down, Pei Hamid Aleph. This is like so eerie, just living in the time that we're living in and seeing all the reports that we're seeing. This is, says the Gemara, Tana Rabbanon ad Hechan hu bodek ad chotmo, up until his nose, namely up until the point that we can measure whether or not the person is breathing. V'yeshomer ad libo, that we have to be able to see his heart. Some say it actually means a little bit lower, that it means his navel, his belly button. Badak umatzel yonim mesim, if they checked and they found that people on the top of the rubble had unfortunately passed away, lo yomar kvar mesu atachtonim. We are not allowed to assume that those who are underneath have perished. We have to assume that they're still alive, and we're machal Shabbos accordingly. Maisahaya, there was an actual story back in the times of the Gemara, matzal elyonim mesim v'tachtonim chayim, and we found that the people at the top of the rubble had unfortunately died, but those who were underneath, they lived in a pocket, whatever it was, they lived in a difficult circumstance, but they hadn't died yet. So says the Gemara, maybe this machlokes from a few lines ago about whether or not we measure death from the chotem, from the nose, or if we measure it from the heart / belly button, whichever one is the shita. Nema hani tanoi ki hani tanoi. Maybe we should say the machlokes is connected. The Tanya, the Brisa writes, Mehechan havlad notzar. From where is a baby in utero? Where does his body build first? So one shita says merosho. He builds from his head. Shene'emar mimei imi ata gozi. You took me from my mother's womb, gozi, like from the word gozes, sheared. I was shorn. I was taken out of. But from where? Ve'omer gazini zrech v'hashlichi. In regards to a nazir, the language of removing the hair is gazi. So we see that the hair is on the head, so it must be the gazi talking about the head. But Abashal Omer mitiburo, no, the baby first starts to create from the belly button, and then the body grows from there and sprouts out into the other elements of the body. So it says the Gemara lav dafka that this is a connected machlokes tanoim. That over here, how was the baby created? Was it the rosh first, or was it the tibor first? That's not necessarily connected to our case. So we measure death by the chotem, or we measure death by the lave. Why not? Says the Gemara 3/4 of the way down. Afilu tema abashol. We could even say like Abashal, Ad kan lo ka'amar Abashal hasam ela le'inyan yitziri dekol midi mimitzi asa mitzar. He says, no, it's just one thing has nothing to do with the other. One's measuring life and death in regards to who's still alive, and the other is asking a different question of how the embryo builds out. And because he was of the opinion that in regards to yitzira, kol midi mimitzi asa mitzar, everything creates from the center. So that's belly button. Aval inyan pikuach nefesh afil Abashal modi the ikr chiyusa be'apehu. Everyone agrees that when it comes to life and death, we don't measure life and death from the belly button. That doesn't make sense. We measure from the nose. And says the Gemara somewhat graphically, it depends how you find the mace. Amar Papa, machlokas mimata lemala. The only machlokas that ever exists is if you find feet first and you're able to uncover the body from the feet first toward the head, mimata lemala, from the bottom of the body to the top. Then you uncover the stomach first before you get to the head. And under those circumstances, it's hard to tell who's alive. Then do we say stop at the belly button, or do we say go up to the face to see if he's still breathing? Aval mimala lemata. If we reveal first the head of a person, since we were able to check the person to see if they were breathing, we were able to access their nose. At that point, you don't have to do any more. That's a lot. That's a lot. Says the Gemara, last short line on Pei Hamid Aleph. Ukvar Haya Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Mahalchim b'derech. They were traveling together. Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. V'Levi, and there's a girsa change here. V'Levi Hasirad. He was part of the family that made the big day Hasirad. Okay. V'Levi Hasirad, Rabbi Shmuel beno. The two of them, beno shel Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, were traveling in tow. Mahalchan achareihem. So these two people, Levi and Rabbi Shmuel ben Osher, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, asked these three gedolim, these three great tanoim, what's the basic marimakom? How do we know that you're allowed to be mechal Shabbos for pikuach nefesh? The Gemara is going to present 6 answers, 5 of them from tanoim and 1 of them from an amora. Let's go. Says the Gemara, Ne'ena Rabbi Shmuel. He was the first one to answer, but he said, I'm going to learn it from another halachic sugya in Shas, a sugya that's referred to as Babim Achteres. In full color in Maseches Sanhedrin, we will get there. Says the Gemara, Ve'amar, and he says as follows, 5 lines from the bottom. Im b'machteres yimotzei haganav. This is a pasuk that references that if a person is willing to tunnel into your home, the halacha is you're allowed to kill the person who's tunneling into your home. Says the Gemara, Umazeh shesafek al mamon ba, safek al nefashos ba. We don't know why this guy's digging into your house. It's a suffix. Maybe he's coming to steal some artwork, and maybe he's coming to kill you. We don't know. We have no idea. Suffix on life. And ushvichus damim metame es haaretz v'gorim l'shchina shetistalek mi'Yisrael. And shvichus damim is metame the land and causes for the Shechina to leave. And even there, where we're besafek, nitan lahatzil b'nafsho, kal v'chomer lepikuach nefesh adoches haShabbos. So that's answer number 1, is that because we navigate the suffix of the case of Baba Machteres by saying that we're still nitan lahatzil b'nafsho, that you can still kill the person who's coming into your home, kal v'chomer, that for pikuach nefesh, one is obligated to break Shabbos. You're allowed to kill, then you're allowed to break Shabbos, that's for sure. So that was answer number 1. Answer number 2. If a person makes a plan to kill one of their friends, so then the halacha is they should be taken from the mizbeach to be killed. So what's going on here? First, let's make a drasha. Last line of Pei Hamad Aleph says the Gemara, from next to the mizbeach, namely if the Kohen is the one, potentially, he was the one who did the killing, potentially. We'll see exactly how this plays out in a moment. But if they need him to put him on trial, so they pull him only if he's near the mizbeach. But once he's on top of the mizbeach doing the avodah, then they wait. So then says the Gemara, hold on one second. When is this halacha true that we take him only from the side of the mizbeach and not from the top? That's when we're putting him on trial to kill him. Aval, says the Gemara, lahachayos, if the reason why they need the Kohen is not because he's on trial, but because he's a witness and could save someone's life, then even afilu me'al mizbechi, we don't mess around. We take him off of the mizbeach so that he can be brought into the trial as an aid. The Kohen might have seen something, and that's a suffix. We're not exactly sure. We're not sure if the words of the Kohen are able to actually be meaningful. The avoda docha Shabbos, and we know that the avoda is docha Shabbos, and we still interrupt that process. So now that's answer number 2. First case, Baba Machteres. Second case, Me'im Mizbechi. Answer number 3, 4 lines down, Pehei Amid Beis. Nene Rabbi Elazar, the Amar, Umamila, Shehi Echad Mimasayim Be'arba'im Ushmona Evarim Shebe'adam Doches HaShabbos, Kal V'chomer L'chol Gufo Shedoches HaShabbos. Very simple svara, although it's a little strange because we don't assume that there are 248 limbs. I know we say it in a colloquial way, but we usually say that there's 206 bones in the body in the secular language. There aren't 248 actual limbs, and in fact, some of the Meforshim changed the language here, that it really should just be Umamila Shehi Echad Me Evarim Shebe Adam Doches HaShabbos. If for one limb you're allowed to be Doches Shabbos, so then Kal V'chomer L'chol Gufo Shedoches HaShabbos Pashut. That's for sure. That's for sure. That should be the case. The difficult svara. One is it Tzivui Doraisa. So they're not exactly matched up. Okay, that's answer number 3. Let's try answer number 4. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Huda Omer as Shabbosai Tishmora. You should protect my Shabbos. Yachol Lakol. Maybe we should protect it to the point of Lakol. Take a look at Rashi on line 4. That you should keep Shabbos all the way to the nth degree, even if you need to die. That it's not true, that we do have a line in the sand whereby we say that it's no longer appropriate to keep Shabbos. If there's pikuach nefesh, there's pikuach nefesh, and then the whole conversation is over, that we don't keep Shabbos anymore. Excuse me. The next answer says the Gemara, Rav Yonasan ben Yosef, Omer, ki kodesh hilachem. Shabbos is kodesh, hi mesura b'yedchem. Great language. The Torah was given to you, the Shabbos was given to you, v'lo atem mesurim b'yado, and you are not put into the hand of Shabbos. So you don't have to die to keep Shabbos. You have to do a lot. You have to be Moser Nefesh. And back in the day, people had to lose jobs every Saturday. But now it's a little easier on that front. But it can be hard to keep Shabbos at times. There are challenges. Baruch Hashem, it's a tremendous respite from the craziness of the week. But v'lo atem mesurim b'yado. Let's see answer number, what is this? Answer number 6? Here, yeah, there are actually 7 answers. Answer number 6, Reb Shimon ben Menashe Omer v'shamru b'nei Yisrael asah Shabbos. That's a famous pasuk. Omra Torah, chila lalav Shabbos achas, kedei sheyishmor Shabbosos harbe. very complex halachic Gemara, but we violate one Shabbos to enable a person to keep many other Shabboses in the future. How exactly does that play out? Okay, these are halachic shilos to be discussed. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Now Shmuel we know is an Amora. So we heard 6 answers from Tanaim, and here is an answer from an Amora. What does Shmuel say? Ihavoi hasam. If only I had been there, I would have given a different answer. Hava mina didi adifa mididu. I would have thought my answer was better than all of theirs. They're all Tanaim. What can I do? I'm an Amora, but I think my answer is better than theirs. What does he say? V'chai bahem, v'lo sheyamus bahem. Why are we all of these svaras in b'machteres himatzei aganav? There's a suffix if he's coming to take your money or coming to take your life. This whole concocted, this sounds so easy. V'chai bahem, v'lo sheyamus bahem. So says the Gemara, Amar Rava, 2 lines into the wide lines, 1/3 of the way down, pay hey Amud Beis. Amar Rava, Lekulu islu pircha, barmi de Shmuel de lesle pircha. All of the previous 6 answers have pirchas on them. They all have challenges to them. Namely, I could undo all of the answers except for Shmuel's. Shmuel's answer I can't undo. And the Gemara is going to sample a few of the ones that it can undo. Remember where we started. We started with the case of Baba Machteres, and we said that there was a suffix of whether or not the guy tunneling in wanted to kill you or steal your money. So says the Gemara. Let's take a look at Rabbi Shmuel's answer. The Rabbi Shmuel, Dilma Kid Rava. Maybe we hold that sugya is seen through the lens of Rava. How does Rava see that world? Dama Rava, my time of Demachteres. Why are we allowed to kill the person who's tunneling in? It's not because of a suffix. It's because of a chazaka. Chazaka, ein adam mamid atzmo al mamono, that a person is going to take a stand on his money, but only to a degree. The guy tunneling in knows that he may come face to face with the owner. The Omar, and we put words into the mouth of the digger, the guy who's tunneling in. That if I see that guy, I'm going to have no choice but to kill him. The Torah Amra, hashkem lahorga. Oh. So says the Gemara, you wanted to build a kal v'chomer. That just like by Baba Machteres, there was a suffix and therefore we could kill. So certainly when there's a suffix, b'koach nefashos, we should violate Shabbos. Says the Gemara, that's not how Rava saw the case. Rava saw the case not as a suffix, but as a chazaka. Totally different. And you can't build your kal v'chomer for a suffix, b'koach nefashos, from here. Says the Gemara, Be'ashkechan vadai. The way that Rava learns the sugya Baba Machteres, it's not a case of suffix, it's a case of vadai. Suffix midala, rhetorically. What kind of case of suffix was that? So we rejected that first answer. Rabbi Akiva Nami. What was Rabbi Akiva's case? That was the case of the that where a person contrived to kill somebody. So fine, let's see what happens over here. Rabbi Akiva Nami, Dilma Kide Abaye, maybe that whole sugya is seen through the lens of Abaye. Damar Abaye, Masrinan le Zuga de Rabbanon. They take a couple of rabbis, a pair of rabbis, Leda Imamish Bidvarav, to see if the testimony of the Kohen actually has veracity. The Ashkechan Vadai. And then when we pull the Kohen off of the Mizbech, it's not a suffix. It's a vadai. They did the research on the material. All the evidence is checked in, and they see this is real. This is a real aid. It's a real witness. So that's not suffix. So then, ve'ashkechan vadai suffix minala. So we undid answer number 2. But the Gemara doesn't go any further. It just says the kulhu ashkechan vadai suffix minala. And in all of the cases, I could reframe them. I could come at it from another angle and tell you that the first 6 answers, I could all undercut, pull the carpet out from under them. None of them are cases of suffix. They're all cases of vadai, in which case I can't build my kal v'chomer. Udishmuel, says the Gemara, 2 lines before the new Mishnah. Udishmuel vadai lesle pircha. Says the Gemara in poetic tone. Amar Ravina v'itemer of Nachman bar Yitzchak. Tava chada pil palta charifa. It's better to have one very sharp flavored pepper, mi male tzana de curry, than a large basket filled with gourds. A little bit insulting. I don't know. Sounds a little bit. Maybe it's just a compliment, we should say. It's just a big compliment to Shmuel, who was a generation out from the Tanaim, who was able to think in a way and come up with an answer that maybe was less sophisticated in its mental gymnastics, but halachically the simplest. So pasha that when a person comes at a crossroads, Rahman al-Lisan, of a suffix pikuach nefashos and Shabbos, of course you break Shabbos. Of course, pikuach nefashos always wins. New Mishnah, halfway down, Peham and Beis, we're going to go until about 5 or 6 lines before the end of the page, 4 lines before the end of the page.
Shmuel is like a general.
Shmuel what?
Like it's not targeted.
It's not targeted to Shabbos. Correct. Absolutely right. Yeah.
Were more like Shabbos.
In a way, but you don't have to even say that. they were making a kal v'chomer to answer the question. The case of Bava Machteres is not a Shabbos case. So there was a case of suffix, and they said we can kill the guy based on a suffix. Good. So I can say that about 100 things that I can now violate Shabbos and Yom Kippur, and I could violate a lot of halachas. They framed it in regards to Shabbos because the questioners, Levi and the other person, I'm blanking on his name right now, the two people who were walking with Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel, they asked about Shabbos, but all of those other svaras were not Shabbos specific, except that the questioner asked that question, right? The Chai Behem is also general, but it just wasn't specifically labeled that way. Now we're getting into the meat and potatoes of what we enjoy most about Yom Kippur, which is a guarantee of tshuva. And this Mishnah speaks about some of the korbanos and some of the practical elements of getting kapara, of generating kapara for ourselves, if anything at all needs to be done on Yom Kippur. And we're going to start it here with this Mishnah. Chatas ve'asham v'adai mechaper. Everyone knows that a korban chatas and an asham, the asham v'adai, mechaper. Two different korbanos, right? So if you do a chatas or an asham v'adai, those are mechaper. Misa, if Rahman al-Itzlan, a person dies, v'yom kippurim, the day of Yom Kippur, mechaprim im hatshuva. That's why they say we never know when our last day is. Everyone should do vidui every day. Should say vidui every once in a while. Tshuva mechaperes al averos kalos. Just tshuva alone works for averos kalos al asay ve'al los asay. An avera kala is a bittul asay. Forgot to wear tefillin, right? Or intentionally didn't wear tefillin. Ve'al los asay. You violated an isser d'oraisa, but not any old isser d'oraisa, just lower level ones. Ve'al hachamuros hu tola ad sheyavo yom kippurim v'chaper. The averos that are more chamuras, the averos that have with them the Meforshim explain an Isser Kares or an onesh of Kares or an onesh of Misa. Those are the ones that are more chamur. So if you want to eat a piece of nevela, so that's a lo saseh, just with tshuva alone, you can get kapara for that. But if you do something like eating on Yom Kippur, so that you need Yom Kippur for. You can't, that's not stop. I mean, not I don't know if that same Yom Kippur would be so helpful. I don't know what the mechanics are, but so says the Gemara, Ve'al chamuros hu tola ad sheyavo yom kippurim v'chaper. Hopefully the person will live out the year because their only kapara can come about for these major isurim that have an onesh of misa or karis can only come about on Yom Kippur. Ha'omer echata ve'ashuv, a person says, all right, I'll do an avera, but I'll do tshuva. I know when I get to Shacharis tomorrow, when I get to Mincha later, I'll clap, I'll chait. Everything's going to be fine. So a person who plans out in advance, that's rishus. That's not right. The einma speaking biyado lasos tshuva. He won't even be given the opportunity to do tshuva. We should try in all of our failures to not do so lahachis. In all of our failures, they should always just be errors of shogeg. Then says the Gemara, and with a variation on the theme, a person says, I'm going to do an Avera, and Yom Kippur will help me. Then in those cases, ain't Yom Kippur mechaper. No, it's not a game. It's not some kind of board game. You're dealing with life and death issues here. So we can't be so frivolous about Averas. Says the Gemara, Averas shebenadam lamakom Yom Kippur mechaper. This we know. That Averos between us and a Kadosh Baruch Hu, Yom Kippur helps for that. Averos shebenadam lechavero, but if Rahman al-Itzlan, there was a type of interaction that generated an Avera between one person and another, in Yom Kippur mechaper shiratzes chavero, then a person is obligated to get ritzui. They're obligated to get forgiveness from their friend. Where does this come from? Dara shebalazar ben Azariah, mikol chatosechem lifnei Hashem titaru, Averos shebenadam lamakom Yom Kippur mechaper. Averos shebenadam lechavero, in Yom Kippur mechaper shiratzes chavero. Same exact language. Strange presentation in the Mishnah. We would have thought the drasha would have come first. It didn't. Reasons might be presented in the Rishonim about that. End of the Mishnah, a very famous Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Akiva, Ashreichem Yisrael. How happy, how blessed are the Jews. Lifnei mi atem mitahor. Who do you stand before that makes you tahor? Umi mitaher eschem. Who makes you tahor? Avichem sheba shamayim. You know that a Kodesh Baruch Hu makes us tahor. That on Yom Kippur we get kapara. Shene'amar v'zarakti alechem mayim tehorim utartem. That a Kadosh Baruch Hu will sprinkle water on us and we will become tahor. The Omer, and the pasuk also says mikvah Yisrael Hashem. Ma mikvah mitares atmeim. Just like a mikvah, when a person who is tameh at the right time goes into the mikvah and they can become a tahor, they can totally transfer. So from tuma to tara, Kadosh Baruch Hu mitares Yisrael. That when it comes to Yom Kippur, that a person can get tshuva. The Gemara digs in with a quick diuk. Asham vadai in asham talui lo. It's a blaring omission in our Mishnah. You included a chatas and an asham vadai. What about a case of an asham talui? Nashim Talui, that should have worked, but it seems like it's left out of the Mishnah. There's no kapara there. So says the Gemara, 10 lines from the bottom of the page, give or take. That's not possible though, because by Asham Talui, by kapara ksiva be. The pasuk says by Asham Talui that there is kapara. So you've left room for a diuk that's not so good. So how does that work? Says the Gemara, Hanach mechapre kapara gemura. When it comes to a korban of a chatas and an asham vadai, so then it's you get a kapara gemura. Asham talui ain't a mechaper kapara gemura. But when it comes to an asham talui, what is an asham talui? You're not sure if you did an avera, so you're not sure. So you do the best you can, but like, is it a clean slate? You might have done an Isser D'Oraisa, and if in fact you reveal at a later point that you actually did the Isser B'Shogeg, you need to go back and bring a Korban Chatas. The Asham Talui is what you do in an absence of, no, I don't know, I might have done the Isser, I'm not sure, I don't know if I broke the threshold. Fine. So it says that's answer number one. Inami says the Gemara, Hanach ein acher mechaper kaparasan. In regards to the Chatas and the Asham Vadai, nothing else is needed. That generates the kapara alone. However, Asham Talui acher mechaper kaparasan. But when it comes to an Asham Talui, a person's not sure if they violated an Aveira, so then other things do take place. It's not as the Mishnah writes, Chayve chatos v'ashamos v'adayin she'avar alein Yom Kippur chayavin. When a person is obligated to bring a korban chatas or an Asham Vadai, and they forgot to bring it before Yom Kippur passes by, the halacha is chayavin. They're still obligated to bring the korbanos. Namely, the kapara is not generated through Yom Kippur; it's generated through the korban. So you have to bring the korban chatas and you have to bring the Asham Vadai. However, ashamos tuluyin peturin. But when it comes to an asham talui, so then the halacha is that you're patur. Last Gemara for the night. Sorry for the longer shiur, just a longer daf. Says the Gemara, Misa v'Yom Kippur mechaper mimatshuva, that our Mishnah had said that death, Rachmana litzlan, and Yom Kippur give a person tshuva. They are mechaper along with tshuva. Ima tshuva in bifnei atzmolo, but death alone is not mechaper. Yom Kippur alone is not mechaper. That's what the diuk is. Ima tshuva in, yes, only if you do tshuva bifnei atzman lo. But if Misa and Yom Kippur happen on themselves, maybe not. Nema de lo kerebi. Maybe with this inference, we should assume that our Mishnah is not like the opinion of Rebbe. The Tanya, the Brisa writes, Rebbe Omer al kol averos sheba Torah, with all of the averos in the Torah, bein asa tshuva, bein lo asa tshuva, Yom Kippur mechaper. Tshuva is not me'akid. Yom Kippurim can take care of everything itself. Chutz me'porek all, except for someone who rejects the corpus of halacha. They don't believe in Torah. Umegal apanim Torah. They're disrespectful. These all are nuanced terms that require more commentary. No time now. Umefer bris basar, a reference to inappropriate behavior. She'imasa tshuva Yom Kippur mechaper v'imlosa tshuva in Yom Kippur mechaper. So it seems from here that our Mishnah can't be like Rebbe, because Rebbe says that Yom Kippurim is mechaper even without tshuva. Says the Gemara, filu tema Rebbe. Tshuva baya Yom Kippurim. If a person did tshuva by itself, so then baya Yom Kippurim, he still needs to wait for Yom Kippur. Yom Kippurim, but if you have Yom Kippur without tshuva, so then lo baya tshuva. Then Yom Kippurim does work by itself. And just to be clear, there is a machlokes about how to read this line. The article has a long arichus on this. It's not a simple few words. I translated it quickly, but this is one of the explanations that it says that tshuva baya Yom Kippur. That if you do tshuva, you still need Yom Kippur. But if you hit Yom Kippur without having done tshuva, then you're still going to get kapara. We're going to stop right here at tshuva at the 4 lines from the bottom. Wishing you all a beautiful night.